Okie dokie. Good morning, everybody, friends, colleagues um, of the Ohio Family and Community Engagement Network here. Um, my name is Tom Capretta, and I'm going to be hosting your network experience today. And today is April 12th, 2022. We're getting there. It's spring. The sun's out. There's some stuff blooming. It is going a little slow this year, but hopefully you got to enjoy some of the beautiful weather on Sunday if it was like it was down here in your neck of the woods. But without further ado or fanfare, we're going to get going today. Oops. Got too many screens. I'm back at the office and all these screens. I'm not used to them. So thank you for bearing with me here. If you haven't done so already, I really appreciate if you said hello in the chat today. Feel free to say hello to any colleagues you see on there. The chat feature, as I'm sure everyone is used to now, you got that drop down. You can private message people. Share things on your mind, make those connections. So good to see everyone this morning. Welcome back. Thank you. Glad to be here. So today's agenda, just to keep things moving along today and get you the resources that you might be looking for. We have two presentations from the Department of Education today, which is really exciting for us. So we're going to have some updates around alternate assessment, which is, right in our wheelhouse and helping school think and navigate about that. And then also on the other side, connect families to information about that. So we're going to have some very important updates from the Office for Exceptional Children there. And others, and we'll also be moving into some updates around mental health and student wellness from the Department of Education as well in their Office for Whole Child Supports. So that'll be exciting. We're also going to have a brief discussion about voices from the field and another professional learning opportunity that we heard about that we're excited to share with you. And then we'll just adjourn for today, hopefully with a couple more resources and pieces of information than we came in with. So before I hand it over to the alternate assessment team here, I just wanted to take a moment to just remind everybody that this is our third and final professional learning webinar of the year. We had a focus on mental health and student wellness and family engagement, kind of that intersection throughout the year. And we heard a lot of great things from University of Miami, stopped by, people from Ohio State University, Dr. Brett Zaromsky talking about some innovations in the field and some new ways of thinking about things. So we want to continue and finish strong with some things that I think will be really important for your work. And as part of our charge to keep everyone connected and up to date with the information that can really affect families and students at the intersection of family engagement and special education, we're really excited to have this presentation today and make sure that everyone's on the same page about where to get resources and things of that nature on alternate assessment and associated kind of things. So without further ado, I do welcome today Mattia Hammond to discuss this work. And she's got some people with her too, but I'll let her take the reins here and hope you guys enjoy. I'll monitor the chat for any questions if you have them. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mattia Hammond. I am in the Office for Exceptional Children at the Ohio Department of Education, and I'm here today with my partner, Wendy Stoika. I'll let you introduce yourself, Wendy.
Good morning. It's so good to see all my friends. I am an assistant director, a new assistant director in the Office of Assessment, and I work with a team of consultants that focus on special populations and special projects, such as the alternate assessment that we'll talk to you about today and the OELPA, and a new assessment that will be coming out next year, which is an alternate English language proficiency assessment. That's an assessment for those students who are English learners who have a most significant cognitive disability. Thanks, Matea.
Yeah, no problem. Trying to share my screen here. Is it shared?
Yes, we can see it now.
Perfect. Is it up here? Sorry,
Yes.
guys, let's say topics.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
You're good.
All right. So today we are going to discuss the alternate assessment decision-making tool with you all, and then we'll also go into our alternate assessment family resources. Wendy will kick us off with the alternate assessment decision-making tool.
Thank you. This is the clarified eligibility guidelines that went out from the department in October of 2020. It had a very bumpy entry because it was at just about the time when districts were looking at determining whether or not students were participating in the spring 2021 test after a year of COVID. And so there was a lot of angst and a bit of challenge and struggle. And so this morning, we wanted to come back to you with an overview of the decision-making tool as you have been working within your regions, within your districts, and really talk to you from the parent perspective. We have Matea and I, since she joined the department in December, we have been talking with lots and lots of districts and also lots of parents, but we still feel as though there may be some misunderstanding about the decision-making tool and wanted to just clarify with you today the importance of using this eligibility guidance for the determination of whether or not a student should take the alternate assessment. In the state of Ohio, we have historically tested close to and a little more than % of students with the most significant cognitive disability. Given that the federal government does have a cap, a limit on the number of students who may be assessed in the state, this is not an accountability for districts. Districts do not have a cap at 1%. That's one of the first misunderstandings that you may have heard, but the state is to test less than 1% of their population using the alternate assessment. And Ohio has really worked very hard, working first with this decision-making tool, and then again, all the great accolades and force within the state support teams, the educational service centers, and within districts to ensure that we are testing the right student with the right test. That's really our focus. We are not as focused on the percentage as we are on students who meet the qualification to take the alternate. And our previous framework for the alternate assessment was very different. And so this is very much more prescriptive. This is much more, we think, clarifies who should be taking the alternate assessment. And right at the very beginning, in our part A of determining the initial eligibility, it does say, does the student have an IEP? And hard to believe, but we have had students take the alternate assessment who do not have a disability, do not have an IEP. And so again, we're coming back to just a very straightforward and in a rubric manner to say that if a student has even a disability in the areas of speech language, in specific learning disability, that they are not eligible to take the alternate assessment. And it could very well be that a student does show, if looking through other parts of the tool, that perhaps the SLD disability category is not appropriate, because as we know, the definition of a specific learning disability does not include a cognitive disability, intellectual disability. And so right at the very beginning, we want to ensure that we are being very transparent and also very supportive of parents understanding what the disability category can lead to, and looking further in the category, additional categories of deafness, emotional disturbance, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, visual impairment. There may or may not be a cognitive or intellectual disability. And so again, we want teams to proceed with caution and to be looking very strategically at how they're having these discussions, especially with families who look to the school to help provide that support and also clarify the guidance that the state is providing. So part A is really just about, does the student have an IEP and what's the disability category? When we move into part B, this is where we're going into much more information relative to determining this idea of a significant cognitive disability. As you know, there is no specific disability category. We have not put together another category or done anything about intellectual functioning, how they score on an IQ test, but we have learned over the years that we've had the alternate assessment in place that significant deficits in adaptive behavior have not always been as prominent in the eligibility guidance as we would like it to be. And so when we talk about adaptive behavior, we're talking about three components: conceptual, social, and practical. And if you go to the next slide, we'll break down a little bit more of the conceptual domain. We set up this tool. Let me also, I guess, say that this finalized tool, this decision-making tool, was 2 years in the making, and many of you were presented with drafts of the tool several different times. We met with many different groups in order to ensure that we had feedback from a vast and variety of diverse stakeholders. But when we talk about adaptive behavior, that's where we felt as though maybe there wasn't enough information that was getting with IEP teams or the data to determine that. So when we talk about conceptual domains, these are the skills that are needed to communicate, to apply academic skills, manage and accomplish tasks. And we've created this rubric across needs. So from column 1, which is a student who is pretty high functioning, I would say, all the way over to column 4. And in providing this rubric, we ask IEP teams to collect the data, to look at the data. If there isn't data that would address this domain, to seek out that data and have the information and the evidence with which to make decisions. Then the next domain is in the social domain, which is an area that we all have concerns for, and I know parents would share this as well. The behaviors that are needed to engage in interpersonal interactions, act with social responsibility, social competence, this idea of being able to socially problem solve, as well as following rules, avoiding being victimized or bullied. This again has rubrics across to ensure that we are addressing the communication needs as well as the social needs for students. And then our last adaptive behavior area is in the practical domain. And this may be the area that it feels as though we've answered the most questions about, because we do know that there are concerns for students, whether or not they're in elementary school or in high school, who still have a need to address personal and health needs, to take care, self-care of themselves. But it also talks about classroom work settings functioning in the school or community. This is about safety, this is about daily living, and this is only one domain. We want to again talk about how this tool is to funnel all of the information for an IEP team to address. And then our next part C of the tool is about determining extensive, direct, individualized instruction and substantial supports. And we had very little of this in our previous framework for determining eligibility, but now we're going into much more information around curriculum instruction and assessment, whether or not a student is not only working on the extended standards, but at what point within the standards, because we still have levels of complexity that go into much more detail. There continues to be misunderstandings and confusion about an accommodation that provides access to grade level standards, to grade level general curriculum, and a modification that changes the outcome of an assessment, changes the outcome of what the target is and what students are expected to know and be able to do. And then finally, we have broadened a great amount of information around assistive technology. Again, these could be students who do not have the right feature match of ensuring that they can communicate, that they can express their wants and needs, and they can respond. We would hope, again, with the third grade reading guarantee and all of the work that Ohio has put into early literacy, that we would have students who by third grade, if not earlier, are ensured to have a communication mode, that they can express themselves, and that we continue to focus on the really critical issue of presuming competence until we are presented with evidence that said a student can't learn, can't understand, and is not communicating. We should be the advocates for those children to ensure that we continue to work on addressing if it needs to be assistive technology. Oh, sorry, I kind of blew through these, Matea. If you go next to the assistive technology one, I just wanted to point out a few more areas in there. Yes. And finally, as we come around to part D, that's okay. As we come around to part D, this is where we're pulling it all together. The decision made after reviewing the entire tool, collection of that evidence, and then we go into what was our guidance for several years, which is the decision to participate in the alternate assessment is based on some things that are not the criteria. And those have not changed. Those continue to be in place, and they continue to be part of the tool because they used to be part of the IEP. And if you go to the next slide, that we're not basing a decision to take the alternate because the student is in a certain educational environment or instructional setting. So all students who attend school at the developmental disability school do not take the alternate assessment unless they are determined by their IEP team in an individual understanding. It's not about students having a poor performance on the general assessment. It's not about their behavior. It's not about absences. It's not that they're an English learner or that we need to provide assistive technology. So continuing to look at those, but again, broadening across the information that we have throughout this tool. And then the IEP team is making that decision and also signing it, as it is not yet embedded within the IEP. There's a link. And so we still encourage IEP teams to ensure that everyone signs that tool. And then we've done what we hope is a really good job of providing additional resources in the glossary. There's several hyperlinks that go into, again, assistive technology. Ocali, our friends at Ocali continue to have a lending library, and so schools can try equipment, they can test equipment, they can do a feature match. They can go into a lot more information about the use of augmentative and assistive technology. And so we really encourage you to use the glossary as though it is an additional resource. And then finally, on this part, it's our FAQ. And we created this frequently asked question organized by each part of the decision-making tool because we know there's questions all the way through. And so we see this as a companion, but we also see it as the thinking behind why it's so critical that we have the eligibility guidance that is focused on these critical areas. There are 27 questions. It's pretty lengthy, but it does go into a lot of detail around ensuring that the right students are taking the right test. Ultimately, it's not about the numbers. It is about ensuring that students have access to the general curriculum. If they are using that through the extended standards, then that it is appropriate for them to do that. And obviously, we have many students. Based on spring 2021, we had about 3,000 students across the state who were transitioning off of the alternate assessment to the general assessment. And we are 3 days away from closing the test window for spring 2022 testing. And we continue to see fewer students taking the alternate assessment, which is appropriate if the IEP team has determined that. And I guess the last thing that I'll share with you is that we have been working very closely with Ocali to address those students who are transitioning off the alternate assessment. And we do have great concerns, and we have supports in place and resources for those teachers and also for parents to better understand the decision-making for these students to participate in the assessment as really an issue of equity. We ensure that we want meaningful information from the assessment, and we will continue to work in that area. And I'm really excited to talk with you all today about what you're hearing, what concerns you have, and what additional resources that we can share with you so that parents have the information that they need in order to fully participate in their IEP team meeting for their child. And I guess I'll stop there. I saw several chats coming in, Tom, so I don't know if we should address those as we're going or if you want us to wait.
Sure. So one question I do think would kind of fit into where we're at right now. And Terry from SST3 kind of asked, what happens if a parent doesn't want their child to be to take the alternate assessment, but they are eligible, and that seems to be kind of like the school's preference.
Oh, so the parents, if you can come off mute, Terry, so I understand this, that the parents want the child to take the general assessment and not the alternate?
Right. There's many parents that don't want their child's focus to be on the intellectual disability category itself.
Sure.
A huge category, obviously, is Down syndrome. We've got families that's kids are identified under OHI because of that, and others that stay on a 504 plan because of that. So I was just curious what I know that ends up being a problem only, I think, because the educational side doesn't understand that piece of it and know how to respond to it more so. So I think that's more of my question.
Okay.
Is if that comes about, how we support and respond, or just send them to ODE.
Well, there's enough of that going around. We're happy to do that as well. We've also, I think that one of the, I don't know if it feels as though one of the positives that's come out of COVID is that we're becoming much more comfortable in a virtual platform. And so it has been practice for the last couple of years to have kind of a Zoom meeting with the family and really be able to talk through what are you concerned about, and give us the basic understanding of the concerns and maybe the misunderstandings. Oftentimes, as you know, there's been a rumor, there's been someone talking to someone else, and it's not, there's a nugget of truth there somewhere, but it is absolutely within our purview to have a conversation so that we can ensure that people really do understand. That's on behalf of the district as well as on behalf of the family. And so I'm sure Matea and I are very happy to follow up with some of those conversations, but to include you as well, so that we ensure that we are really providing that technical assistance so that you can also support families who have similar concerns. Well, I will stop there and turn it over to Matea. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. So my name is Matea Hammond again. I think I went through my intro pretty fast. I work in the Office for Exceptional Children on the Diverse Learners team. And I also work on the Special Populations team in the Office of Assessment, working directly on the alternate assessment. Today, I'm going to talk to you about our alternate assessment family resources. Our family resources cover general assessment questions. What is the alternate assessment? What grades? What content tests are available? They also discuss eligibility and participation questions you may have, who takes it, how does the IEP team make a decision, how does this affect my child? And then we also have some resources available over the extended standards and instruction for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. And all of our resources are available in Spanish, and should you need our resources to be translated into another language, you can reach out to us and we can work on that. We also have a fourth family resource that I will discuss today. It's a one-page flyer that we hope is very helpful to IEP teams and parents during special education meetings. So if you go to education.ohio.gov, which is ODE's website, in the top right corner, we have a key search box. You type in alternate assessment, the first link that appears is our website. It has changed probably since the last time you've been on our website. In the top left corner, we have a red and white box now that is titled Quick Links. Here you will find the alternate assessment frequently asked questions. They are in English and in Spanish. They were previously in a document, but the department has decided to change the formatting to links to a question. So when you click the question, it will take you directly to the answer of that question. We also do have our one-page flyer here linked at the top of the page, since it is a hot new resource that we have been sharing with the community and that we do want people to utilize and view. We wanted to include some frequently asked questions that the alternate assessment team get into our presentation today. One of those questions is, why should students with the most significant cognitive disabilities participate in academic instruction and assessment? So under IDEA, all students do have the right to have the same opportunity to access academic content and demonstrate the mastery, in addition to learning functional life skills, communication, social, and practical daily living skills. So in addition to those skills, students with the most significant cognitive disabilities must have access to the general curriculum, be involved in the general curriculum, and make progress in the general curriculum. And the general curriculum means the same grade level academic content standards curriculum that is afforded to other students. So students with the most significant cognitive disabilities will receive their content through instruction based on Ohio's Learning Standards Extended. This does have to also deal with equity, and mentioned in the Office for Exceptional Children's Each Child Means Each Child. Ohio's greatest challenge remains educational achievement for each child. So the path to equity begins with a deep understanding of the history of discrimination and bias and how it comes to impact our current society. So equity issues affect all of Ohio's students. However, strategies that we implement to create equity for students with disabilities need to be very, very specific. So all students need to be represented in the picture of all students in Ohio. I did mention that students with the most significant cognitive disabilities are receiving their instruction through Ohio's Learning Standards Extended. If you would like to know what that is, they are designed to make Ohio's learning standards more accessible for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. These extended standards also ensure that the students who take the alternate assessment are provided with multiple ways to learn and demonstrate knowledge aligned to grade level standards. And at the same time, these standards are designed to maintain the rigor and high expectations of Ohio's learning standards. The Ohio Learning Standards extended target the same academic content as Ohio Learning Standards, but they are reduced in breadth and complexity of the grade level standards into alternate achievement markers for state testing purposes. So these standards ensure equal participation in grade level assessment with allowable modifications to grade level outcomes. This is a question that we've been getting pretty frequently, and I do want to express that we also feel that is an important question. It's a heavy question that involves a lot of feelings, and ODE wants the state to know, and parents and educators and other stakeholders to know that we understand the importance of this question, hence why it is a part of our frequently asked questions. I will go over this question briefly. However, there is a more in-depth response on the website. And should you want to discuss this more with the alternate assessment team, we will link our contact information and you can ask us more in-depth questions for more of an individualized circumstance. And so in Ohio, all students who graduate from high school will receive a regular diploma. Ohio does not have an alternate diploma, certificate of attendance, or some other lesser diploma option for students who do not meet regular graduation requirements. Parents must understand that while a student who takes the alternate assessment receives the same diploma as other students, the diploma does not reflect the same level of post-high school readiness. This is because the students who have taken the alternate assessment have learned academic content that is greatly reduced in breadth, depth, and rigor, and they are not prepared for the same post-graduation goals as students who earn their diploma by meeting regular requirements. And when students take the alternate assessment, the expectations about what they can learn and be able to do are significantly reduced compared to their typical peers. And we also have been receiving a lot of alternate assessment questions around alternate students who take the alternate assessment and their graduation requirements. And we also Wendy is actually working directly on that topic. And we also are prepared to answer those questions as students get closer to graduation and that time approaches.
Yeah, if I can just interrupt just quickly, if you are interested in some graduation discussion and there's time, Tom, I'm happy to give a little update when Matei is finished.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
And lastly, I just wanted to share our alternate assessment one-pager. It's our one-page flyer that was created in 2022, so it is updated. Pretty excited about it because we've gotten very great feedback about it. And so I'll just tell you what it is. It's very recent and updated. The document is housed on our alternate assessment website right here as soon as you go to the page. It serves as a companion to our other alternate resources. So it just provides a reminder that there is federal legislation in NESA that requires all students to participate in statewide assessments, and it helps parents and IEP teams kind of decide whether the alternate assessment is a good fit for their student and what resources to utilize to make that decision. So, and also it's a nice reminder for our parents and educators and stakeholders that the IEP team determines how students with disabilities participate in statewide assessment. So ultimately, our goal is for this document to serve as a useful piece of guidance to IEP teams, parents, and other stakeholders during special education meetings regarding alternate assessment eligibility and participation. I was an intervention specialist, and this document would have been very helpful when I was trying to explain the alternate assessment, explain who takes it, and why I would even suggest the alternate assessment to a family. So if you have any questions, I have not been monitoring the chat, so we can take questions now, and then also Wendy can share any updates on the alternate assessment graduation requirements.
Yes, thank you, Matei. and Wendy so far, and we would invite any of those questions. You can feel free to take yourself off mute if you're ready, or drop anything in the chat, and we'll give a second for that to come in.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate all your comments in the chat too. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Helen, and Wendy, you know, I'm always got a question from the field.
Ready.
We've had some recent questions for some kids that have come off alternate assessment, and let's say not even high school, we're talking middle school, and they've been on. The questions have been, because some people are still teaching the extended standards because the student is reading at such a low grade level, and we said they have to have grade level content, and we've suggested using the progressions to intersect into the general standards, so they would be prepared for a test. And then we're getting questions about, can they still, we know not extended standards, but can they still have a modified curriculum to get them where they need to be? And that's kind of been a question that's been floating around. Some people say yes, some people say no. Way back when, when alternate assessment went, we were always told extended standards, no modified for students that aren't on alternate assessment. But with this big, I'm not saying wrong push, but with this big push, we have a lot of kids coming off, and teachers are struggling to get them where they need to be. But also we have directors calling saying, is this legal? You know, as far as, are we allowed to modify? I need to be able to tell my intervention specialists, no. We keep telling them, you know, you have to do grade level, and we've told them about the progressions, because we've told that to people all along for kids that weren't on alternate assessment. Shauna had done a big training on how you can use that. So those are the main questions I'm getting now, more so than complaints about not coming up, about coming off of alternate assessment.
Sure. Well, absolutely. Now that we have a pretty large population of students coming off the alternate, which is large for this for this group of students, I do think that that's the next logical step in, now what do I do? I was pretty clear that we were using the extended standards, we were taking the alternate assessment, and now we're going down a different road, a different pathway. And so those are the questions, and they're the right questions to be asking. That is why we have been working so closely with Shauna and O'Callaghan in the new Literacy for All website, which is providing resources about that transition from not just the assessment, because the assessment is only the end goal. How did students do? How did they progress? But now we need to talk about the instruction that they're receiving. And I will continue to say in the Office of Assessment that the transition must include the standards where students were and are, as we're transitioning to and back to grade level standards. That is the trajectory at K2. As you know, we don't have extended standards in kindergarten through grade 2 because we expect students and teachers to be working at grade level until something else is either happening, or we now have more information to say that we need to reduce the depth and breadth. But we continue to offer and continue to support the extended standards that will actually be going up for revision in 2023. So this is, in some ways, it's the perfect timing for being able to really look again much more strategically at the extended standards, along with the revisions. I think that there's also a couple content areas of the grade level standards that are also up for revision. So our intention is to do that kind of at the same time. For now, I would continue to be supporting educators to be meeting the needs of their students. This isn't an overall yes or no. I think that's why you're getting maybe yes, maybe no, because it is about the individual needs of the student. And I would not say wholesale yes or no. It is the individual needs.
Right, and that's kind of what we've been saying. It's just, we had one director that was like, am I, you know, is this legal as far as can they be teaching? We said, you have to look at the individual students. We've always said you have to teach on grade level, whether it be on alternate assessment or not, you can't. And, it's usually the kids that are older that went on alternate assessment in third grade.
Absolutely.
So, and I think that's what we're looking at is just some more. We provided some before COVID, but for more gen ed teachers to work with just students in their classrooms, but using more the progressions and whatever for entry points into the gen assessment. And maybe Shauna's going to do another big thing besides literacy.
I don't know. She's kind of tired. Let's see what she's going to do this summer. That's true. Thanks for that question. We do get that question an awful lot. And we also know that there's work within the Office for Exceptional Children to ensure that we're also consistently defining accommodations and modifications. Sometimes it's our language, sometimes it's our terms that we think we're saying the same thing, but we need to get on the same page. So happy to help with that as well. I think that's definitely some of our work over the summer as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing, what people see as accommodations versus modifications. And we've been trying to work hard with that. But thanks.
Absolutely. Any other questions about the tool or the family resources? And then I'm happy to update you a little bit. Maybe you're just on the edge of your chair wanting to hear about graduation. We did present to the Performance and Impact Subcommittee of the State Board of Education yesterday afternoon. We did introduce a new competency score for students who take the alternate assessment to meet competency and readiness next year. As I'm sure you all know, we have significant changes in graduation for students in Ohio. And so the class of 2023 will now be required to obtain their curriculum credits that they have always been required to do. In lieu of that, for students, I would say students with the most significant cognitive disability, they still have a provision to graduate and use their IEP goals, meeting their IEP goals in lieu of curriculum credits. That should be a very small number of students and a very rare occurrence that students are not earning credits. The second bucket, Amy Smansky loves to call them buckets, and I like that too. So the second bucket is meeting competency, and that proposed score is the basic level. So as you know, we set 5 performance levels in July of 2021 through the state board, and proficient has been a 700 score, a scale score. What we propose to the state board, and we hope that they will vote on that and approve that sometime during the summer. It'll probably be August before it's in place, that the basic score, which is the lowest level of basic, be the competency score for English language arts and mathematics. And then the third bucket is earning SEALs. And you may have heard that there is no excusal for a student to earn a SEAL. They must earn a state SEAL and a local SEAL. And students taking the alternate assessment, if they score in the basic level on science and or social studies, may earn the state SEAL for science or citizenship. And we are still working on some other guidance that can provide career readiness. For the local SEALs, school districts should be working, and they should be communicating with their other providers, such as their DD schools. I don't know exactly how this is all working, but I understand that there's lots of a flurry of activity to determine and develop local SEALs for students who take an alternate assessment to earn that local SEAL. And so again, I know it's coming up quickly, but we are hoping to ensure again that it's meaningful, that graduation requirements will be meaningful for students who take this assessment. And Helen, let's see, students need to earn 2 SEALs, 1 state and 1 local. And I would point you to the Department of Education website. I can send that link. I'll put the link in the chat for information about how that's going forward. But hopefully we will have that approved sometime within either the June or July state board meeting. And then we're happy to share that with you all in the fall.
Yes, and while I know that even members of this network have already been looking towards next year and some things that they'll be looking towards communicating to families and with schools around updated graduation requirements. What you just said was a long list of things. I think we got to get you back
Yes,
here in August to maybe go
when it's
over this
real.
with it
Yeah.
is a real thing, and we're also, I think a lot of us are looking forward to maybe what we perceive as a kind of little more streamlined approach to graduation for students and families
Mhm.
to understand. And I think that what you're bringing up just made me a little a little anxious about the whole thing, and we'd love to maybe get you as well as some other people or however that works from the department to just give us a little brush up on that at the before next school year kicks off.
Absolutely. And I would also recommend, if you are not aware, that the Office of Graduation Success does host biweekly office hours. And I would say, please do get into those and ask your questions, and don't wait for like a special ed office hour to do that, because we are talking about graduation requirements that impact all students. And Graham Wood and Travis Taylor in that office can absolutely help you with those questions as well. We work very closely together.
Very cool. I appreciate that. I do see Kim raised her hand. I'm wondering if you have a question, Kim, before we.
I do, if that's okay.
Absolutely. 100%.
Absolutely. Hi, Kim.
Okay.
Oops.
Hi there. I was working with the district who was over for the participation rate. So they were higher for the alternate assessment participation rate. And we were talking about this tool. So I shared this tool with them, and that was one of the things that they were going to the improvement plan, was to share this handout. For I was also talking about participation in the alternatives of state graduation requirements, federal graduation requirements, about how important, transparent to families about this.
Yeah.
Why would we do that? Why would we count to 10?
I wonder, is it I'm having trouble hearing you, Kim. I wonder if I can follow up with you. You're breaking up pretty bad, and I don't know if it's just me.
No, it's not just you.
Okay. All
She
right.
exited the meeting.
Oh no. Yeah, we'll make that connection.
Okay.
And
I'll reach out to Kim too and make sure that it gets back to the rest of the group, because I know that Kim speaks from not only a parent consultant perspective, but also a parent. And so I really want to hear her question.
Yes, I would too, as Kim's also been a leader kind of in our group of looking towards next year stuff too. Oh, you
want to try again?
Okay, did you hear? How much
Sorry.
did you hear? No, it's my bad.
A little bit.
Not that much. You might have to turn your camera off.
Okay.
Try that one. I know you're working with a district has been flagged for significant disproportionality for alternate assessment.
Yes, and I was talking to them about how they could share the importance of a student meeting Ohio's graduation requirements, but by participating in the alternate assessment would mean that they do not meet the federal graduation requirements. And I think it's a matter of transparency to the families.
Yes.
And they asked, why would we tell our families that? We are not going to tell our families that. And I just was completely dumbfounded by that. And like I said, I had to count to 10. Because I think it's a matter of transparency. You need to be open and honest and have those conversations with families. So I'm wondering if others have had similar situations or ideas on how to handle that, because as most of you know, I'm in this situation with my own child, and I would want my district to tell me this, just because then I would have that information to be able, as a family, to be informed. So I'm just wondering if anybody else had similar situations. So.
I don't want to jump in. I'm not seeing anybody turn off their camera or turn on their mic. But Kim, I would absolutely support that concern. I would say we need to confront that in a much more transparent way. And in some ways, that's what the decision-making tool is doing. What I meant to say, or I hope I conveyed, is that when we say that a student with a specific learning disability doesn't qualify for the alternate assessment, it may be that the disability category is incorrect. And we have found maybe a more palatable disability category, but that is not transparent with the family. And we want to, again, be much more transparent, not that it's harsh, but that it is the reality. And once we understand what the reality is, we can work to impact what we want to do. The curriculum, the instruction, and the assessment are only going to be in a better place, and the outcome for the child, especially post-secondary. We have great concerns over students who receive a diploma that can't really do anything with it, and really concerns because we've taken such a huge stance from closing sheltered workshops to integrated supportive employment. That's where we want to go.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Absolutely, Kim. I'd love to stay in touch with you about additional resources we can develop in order to be more transparent.
I'll just add to Kim's, and I won't dominate the conversation anymore, but I think that the federal information, there are many people that don't understand that at all. And I spoke to my director saying, I think some of our directors don't understand that. Nothing against them, but especially teachers in the classroom, nothing against teachers, but I really don't think they know Ohio's graduation versus the federal requirements. And I do think that's something that really needs to be discussed, like Kim was saying.
Well, we'd love to come back and talk with you. Maybe we'll talk in between meetings, but Tom, we'd be very excited to be invited back to have further discussion on this topic. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. This is so many dots are being connected right now for our work. And so we will definitely be in touch about having you back and making sure everyone's got the appropriate resources from today's presentation. But I will stop here just to thank you both for stopping by today and sharing this information and really connecting it to other parts of our work. So please join me in thanking Matea and Wendy for their time today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so we'll just take a moment here. We'll take this information, very big information. I know stuff that a lot of us have been thinking about and will continue to think about in the context of graduation for next year. So that was that's going to be another one we got to keep in front of us and keep in front of our colleagues in schools and districts and stuff. And I'm really interested in some of the work that you guys are already thinking through about really communicating some of this information with families, right? Because families cannot kind of have their full role at the table if they don't even have the information in the first place. And I think that's been a little bit of issue with the current graduation standards. And so hopefully we can, with this information, move forwards and think of some ways to ensure that our schools and districts and even our offices and such are able to communicate this to families so that they can plan for their futures and make sure that they're on track to achieve everything they want to achieve. So with that, we are going to make a small transition. We take a deep breath and put aside alternate assessment and graduation for a second to move into a really another super important area for our work, something that has been at the forefront of, I think, our minds for even the last couple of years now, and has been kind of a pretty big investment in the department. I don't know if you all saw the reports about student success funding and things that came out, but the money coming into these areas around supporting student wellness is being spent and implemented in school districts. And so this is not only an area that is important for us because we're passionate and love kids and love families and want everyone to do the best things for them and have their best experiences, but because this is what our school leaders and district leaders are actually are in the process of talking about and implementing and thinking about actively. So in coaching conversations and things like this, some of this may be coming up. So I'm really excited today to transition to our colleague, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, Nicole from the Office of Whole Child Supports today, to talk about some of updates around this topic area from the department. So thank you so much for being here today, Nicole.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Obviously, anybody who knows me knows that mental health is a huge passion of mine. And if I haven't met you before, my name is Nicole Kaler. I am the mental health consultant for the Office of Whole Child Supports, sorry, trying to get my PowerPoint going. Office of Whole Child Supports with the Ohio Department of Education. I am a licensed social worker as well. So prior to coming to the department, my experience is primarily in direct care with children and youth in different school-based settings. And right before I transitioned to the department a little over a year ago, I was the director for a day treatment program in Columbus, Ohio. I did start out as the school climate coordinator here at the department, and then I transitioned into this role back in November-ish. So I'm here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about student and staff wellness in Ohio. So we're going to talk a little bit about the data that we're hearing, that we're seeing from across the country, what we're hearing from schools in Ohio, some of the department's initiatives, and then just some recommendations around best practices. So at the very end, I will welcome any questions if you want to put them in the chat as I'm presenting or wait until I'm finished. And then I also reference a couple different reports and links that I will put in the chat when I'm finished, and I can share with Tom at the very end of my presentation today. Moving slow. There it goes. All right. So I wanted to start with sharing some data and information at the national level, pre-COVID data from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, or SAMHSA. Their national survey on drug use and health indicates that youth were already experiencing more anxiety, depression, and suicidality than in previous years. And a surge of behavioral health issues is normal following a disaster or traumatic event like a pandemic, with expected increase in stress, anxiety, depression, use of alcohol and other drugs brought on by the uncertainty or the loneliness, feelings of isolation across all ages.
Hi, Nicole, really
Yes.
quick. You are sharing, just want to give you a heads up, your presenter view right now.
Okay, I'll
So,
stop that.
sorry for
I'm
interrupting.
not super, it's okay. I'm not super familiar with Zoom. Give me 1 second. Thank you for that heads up. There we go. Nope. Sorry, we use Teams at the office, everybody. Okay. Well, I thought I did it. Let me stop sharing altogether. I apologize. I even practiced before I came here and that did not do it.
It's all good.
Oh, now it doesn't want to play it at all. All right.
I broke your PowerPoint. So
You broke it. All right. I'm going to exit out of PowerPoint. I wish we could all just use the same platform because everybody who presents on Teams tells me they hate it. So if we could all just use the same thing.
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody's kind comments because this is like not how I like to start. All right, let's switch it now. How's that look?
So if you do that display, oh, that looks good actually.
Good.
Now it's
Thanks
working.
so much.
Now it's working. All right. All right. So we'll get back to it. It's important for us to know. So I was talking about the surge in adolescent and child rates of anxiety, depression, suicidality. And what's important for us to remember is that even with pandemic related mental health concerns, it will likely not result in lifelong mental illness for most people. Added stressors can really increase the risk. So if we put in protective factors, which I know you all had a huge presentation on your last meeting, we put in those protective factors, we address some of the risk factors, then we can really see that young people or adults even can be resilient in the long term. And resiliency, as I'm sure this group knows, really helps you prepare to do really hard things later in life. And so while we have these concerns that may have been presented, this is not kind of what some people have referred to as that death sentence of mental health concerns in the future. And it feels like an understatement at this point to say that the COVID-19 pandemic has changed our lives. I have been presenting on mental health and COVID since I started with the department. And every time I present, I have felt like I've said, we're almost towards the end, right? We're almost towards the end. And so at this point, we know that it's impacted everybody's lives, children, adults, everyone alike. And we saw the changes in routines, and especially early on in 2020, that was daily. Same with the lack of predictability. We really didn't know what the next step was, what was going to happen, increased fear and anxiety, whether that was for ourselves or for others or later the collective society. And extended periods of isolation, especially in the initial lockdown period, but people continued to be isolated throughout and continue to be isolated due to health concerns or mandatory quarantines, and limited access to food and safe shelter, remembering that it impacted all of the students and adults differently, and some of the safety nets that our students previously had access to maybe were not available to them during the height of the pandemic. And so all of these things here on the screen are really risk factors that can impact mental health and well-being. And so when we're talking about mental health and wellness needs, it's really important that we continue to keep the collective trauma that everybody has experienced at the forefront of our minds. So when I refer to this collective trauma later in the presentation, remembering that it's our students, it's our families, it's also our staff. So the U.S. Surgeon General released an advisory report in December of 2021 on protecting youth mental health. And if you have not read this yet, I highly encourage that you do so. I'm going to link it at the end of my presentation. It's about 60 pages, but it's not a difficult read. According to the report, in recent years, national surveys of youth have shown major increases in certain mental health symptoms, including depressive symptoms and suicidal ideation. From 2009 to 2019, the proportion of high school students reporting persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness increased by 40%. Those seriously considering attempting suicide increased by 36%, and those creating a suicide plan increased by 44%. Between 2007 and 2018, suicide rates among youth ages 10 to 24 in the US increased by 57%. Early estimates from the National Center for Health Statistics suggest that there were more than 6,600 deaths by suicide among the 10 to 24 age group in 2020. So there's been many proposed hypotheses by professionals in the field about why there is this increase. Some believe the trends of reporting mental health challenges seem higher because young people are becoming more comfortable and more familiar with advocating for their rights, with sharing their mental health concerns, with talking about it more openly than individuals have in the past. Other research points towards the growing academic pressure, limited access to mental health care, health risk behaviors such as drug and alcohol use, and just broader societal stressors. So since the pandemic began, rates of psychological distress among young people, including symptoms of anxiety, depression, and other mental health disorders, have increased. And recent research covering 80,000 youth globally found that depressive and anxiety symptoms doubled during the pandemic. So 25% of youth experienced depressive symptoms and 20% experiencing anxiety symptoms. So like I mentioned, he issued this report or this advisory, and in it were recommendations across systems and across audiences. And it targeted families, educators, healthcare providers, media, social media, community organization, and funders. And so what we did at the Office of Whole Child Supports is we really looked at what the recommendation was for schools. What he outlined for schools were recommendations around creating positive, safe, affirming environments, healthy development, recognizing changes in mental and physical health, providing a continuum of supports, developing a school-based mental health workforce, monitoring the mental health and promoting the mental health of all school personnel, enrolling and retaining students in healthcare coverage, and prioritizing students with higher needs. So what we did in the office was we went through every single initiative, guidance, resource, everything that we have that's connected to mental health. And we put them in these different categories. And we're really using that to guide our future work and kind of where we're looking at for grants and different resources that we're putting out. And I'll reference some of this later in the presentation. So the data on this screen was collected through the Ohio School Wellness Initiative, which I will talk about a little bit later in this presentation, but this data was collected through Miami University during their needs assessment phase of a project. And it surveyed 115 buildings across the state. And so they surveyed schools to understand what areas of concern have been impacted because of the pandemic. And so on the screen, you can see anything in red is where the concerns have increased during the pandemic. So we see an increase in suicidal ideation, depression, and anxiety. Those are the highest. And that really falls in line with what the national data is showing as well. Other increases would be social isolation, trauma exposure, behavior problems, self-harm, grief and loss, and substance abuse. So in response to both the Surgeon General's advisory, the anecdotal stories we were hearing in the field, the data from Miami University, the Department of Education partnered with the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services to hold several listening sessions that were also paired with a survey in case individuals didn't feel comfortable speaking. And these listening sessions were with educational associations, mental health organizations, and professional associations, and district and school personnel. And we really wanted to hear what was happening on the ground level. So this first slide that I'm going to talk about is what we were hearing about what's happening in the schools in relation to students. And then my second slide will be about staff. So behavior management is creating significant challenges this year in many schools, which I'm sure you all are very aware of. Given the amount of time students were at home, they've returned to the classroom really struggling to manage intense emotions. They were reporting both the high end of disruption and aggression, as well as sadness and anxiety and depression, struggling to follow rules. And then also in terms of substance use, we were hearing that students were using vape pens much more frequently and often in class or on school property. knowing that that was not allowed. And we had some conversations around that being a coping mechanism for anxiety. They're still experiencing pandemic-related uncertainty for their normal daily schedules or their future events like sports and dances, all of things that have been canceled or have been inconsistent over the past few years. And inconsistent staffing has really caused some distress and anxiety among students. Attendance is a very big concern for students. Teachers and some of the administrators noted that very often students were reporting somatic symptoms, and even when they were being cleared by a medical provider, they were not returning to school. And so this could be anxiety related to being in school, or the new kind of focusing on the new expectations of being in school, or it could be a result of some parental anxiety as well. And we heard that there were more conflicts arising due to time on technology or in social media outside of school that they would then bring back into the school environment. And a lot of this was attributed to the time out of school. So that year that they were out of school where they had more access to technology. But we know from other data and reports that students are spending a lot more time on things like TikTok. And there were those TikTok challenges earlier in the year where they are encouraging really negative behaviors in school. So administrators were spending significant time handling peer conflict on school grounds when things were starting outside of school. So what they asked for during these listening sessions, they said students needed more wraparound services and wraparound supports. So after school programming like the YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club to really provide that structure and academic assistance. Teachers were reporting it was taking a really long time to get students caught up. And when they did, they were still focusing on behavioral concerns, or vice versa. They were focusing on behavioral concerns, not able to catch them up on academic support. So this would be kind of an option to help strengthen those academic pieces. And as late January, early February, we were still hearing that parents were struggling with consistent childcare. So after school programming, wraparound supports, more of them were needed. Students are struggling with social skills and developing positive relationships with their peers and school staff. So students needed time to develop and focus on those positive relationships. They need, and we know that when students have those positive relationships, they feel safer, they can learn better, they can express themselves appropriately. And they just really needed to work on reconnecting with each other in person. And because students have more intense mental health and behavioral challenges, they needed a higher level of interventions and supports. And those needing the highest level of intervention really needed to be matched with a professional. So in general, we were hearing that they needed more mental health services along the continuum: prevention, consultation, and access to behavioral health services. Like their students, staff are also experiencing higher levels of stress and anxiety than in previous years due to many of the same factors. Again, we experienced that collective trauma. We all went through the pandemic. Staff have also identified that there really haven't been opportunities professionally or personally to process the past few years and to talk with their colleagues or figure out what they want to do to move forward. Workforce and time really go hand in hand. Due to the staffing shortages, there's less time for relationship building and support. There are challenges with adequate staffing in all roles at schools. So existing staff are really feeling overwhelmed. They don't have opportunities for a break for students or to plan because they're often covering for other staff in their building. And they don't have time to really connect with their colleagues either. Like I was mentioning, that opportunity to process the health workers to meet the emerging needs, relationships with students and with each other to connect again. They also asked for more training on higher level interventions like trauma and behavioral needs, and more support from mental health professionals in general. Teachers specifically asked for permission to focus on mental health and wellness with their students, and to have the community understand the importance of focusing on these mental health needs in order to then move forward with academic progress. So now I'm going to transition into some of the department-led initiatives and resources that we have to focus on mental health. Some of these were developed in response to our listening sessions and the national data, but some of these were also in progress prior to that. And a lot of them were in response to the needs coming out of COVID. I can also say that we have some exciting initiatives coming down the pipeline that I can't share yet, but as you all probably know, the governor has a huge focus on mental health, on children's mental health. So we do have some funding coming through with that. We have a few exciting projects coming up. I'm happy to come back when I'm able to talk about them more, but we do have a lot of work in our future with mental health. So in October of 2020, the department received $2 million through a federal grant from the U.S. Department of Education. And the focus was really to increase the number of school-based mental health professionals providing mental health services to students and families in 7 of Ohio's Appalachian counties. They're Belmont, Guernsey, Harrison, Morgan, Muskingum, Noble, and Tuscarawas. So over the next 3 years, the department will subgrant with Muskingum Valley Educational Service Center to lead and manage that grant. We're also partnering with East Central Ohio ESC, Ohio Valley ESC, Ohio University, and community mental health providers to implement the recruitment and retainment strategies to increase the mental health professionals. Currently, we have 24 districts in the Ohio Valley ESC region committed to hiring mental health professionals directly or through an ESC, and we have the capacity to add additional. So we are halfway through year 2 of this grant. And so after our first year of the grant, we added 8 mental health professionals to the region. So previously, the ratio of mental health providers to students was 1 mental health provider to 500 students. And I don't want to misquote, but I think the national recommendation is about 1 to 45. By adding those 8 mental health professionals, we were able to reduce it from 1 to 500 to 1 to 330. And so that was after 1 year of the grant. Like I said, we're less than halfway through year 2, and we have hired 3 additional in year 2. And we have about 10 interns planned to start in the fall. And we anticipate hiring more mental health professionals as we get closer to the school year. So if you fall into one of the regions that I mentioned and you want to know if your school or your district is participating, feel free to email me or ask me at the end of the presentation. I can work on a list, because we are expanding, and the more involvement we have from our different partners, the better. We have a lot of momentum going, and I'm hoping that we can continue that. So I mentioned this project in terms of the data collection at the very beginning. Through the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, the Ohio Department of Education and the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services requested $7 million to support capacity development, connection to community resources, and implementation for Ohio schools. So the department is providing grant funds to Miami University's Center for School-Based Mental Health Programs to develop, train, and coach districts and schools with a student assistance program aligned to the Whole Child Framework and PBIS framework. And there's 3 different components that really address the mental health crisis in the state of Ohio currently. The first one is implementing an Ohio model of a student's assistance program, or the SAP. So the SAP is already a developed program through SAMHSA. And so what we're doing is we're Ohioizing this framework, and it aligns with Ohio's existing structures that we already have in place with PBIS. So it would include things like education, prevention, early identification, evidence-based intervention, referral processes, and guided support services. And this program is intended for K-12 students who are exhibiting a range of substance use, behavioral health, and mental health concerns that are impacting their academic progress. The second part is strengthening Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports within the Ohio SAP model to really focus on substance use, mental health, and behavioral health. And the third is promoting mental health, wellness among school administrators and staff. And so we currently have 80 schools participating across 54 counties. The resources that are developed through this initiative will be available to all Ohio schools upon the completion of the pilot, which is in September of this year. So I will have more information to follow. We're kind of working currently on our communication plan. We have teams who are committed in the different regions of Ohio to training on this model, to updating materials, to disseminating materials. And we have a platform we're developing where schools can access the Ohio Student Assistance Program and the different materials that were developed during the project. So based on the national data, the state level data, and listening sessions, the Department of Education partnered with the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services and Department of Public Safety to develop a toolkit to really assist educators, families, and communities in responding to the challenges amplified by COVID-19. As I mentioned earlier, the distress symptoms are really common during disasters, but we know that most people can cope well and move on and not develop mental health disorders. And while many young people are resilient, we know that by providing them tools in the community, at school, and in their family, it can continue to develop and grow that resiliency. So really the goal of this toolkit was to provide resources, quick resources for individuals within the school setting and in the home to support their students, improve their overall well-being. So the collection of resources and recommendations is organized by audience type. And so the audiences are teachers, school administrators, district administrators, students, and families and communities. And I'm excited because this was actually posted to our webpage yesterday. I was really hoping it would be ready for today's presentation. So I will share this link out when I am finished because it is now live. This is just a quick example of one portion of the toolkit, just so you can kind of get a visual. We wanted to make sure it was really resource friendly. You had quick access and you could get a resource if somebody had 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes and said, I'm really struggling with this today. What's a good support? So as you go through the toolkit on the webpage, the audience type is clearly defined at the top. You can see this page, it's teachers. It kind of explains the needs for that specific audience type. So we went off of what we heard from listening sessions, information in the Surgeon General's report, and what data Miami had provided for us. And then you will see the type of need that's being addressed that's listed. So just for this example, it's relationship building, but there are things around trauma-informed practices, behavior management, self-care, classroom management below it that you would see if you were on the live web page. And then you would see specific concise strategies. So if you would click on the create safe and supportive classrooms, it would take you to the classroom-wise library where there's 6 or 7 videos. They're each about 2 minutes at most, and it gives a tangible, quick activity or tidbit for somebody to focus on. And in terms of the administrator support, because I know this is where a lot of you all in the audience are today, where you would support and who you would speak with. We really looked at following the recommendations from the Surgeon General and how we could tie it into our recommendations for districts. So the first is using evidence-based prevention-focused curriculum and programs. On the toolkit, we do outline some of our recommendations on where you can find these evidence-based programs. We also recommended strengthening tiered supports. So really looking at universal screenings to help identify student needs who may be at the most high risk for stress or trauma so that you can engage early. Evaluating universal strategies. So this is when we're providing TA currently to districts, this was one of the first things that we ask is, are your teachers aware of what your universal strategies are? Are your staff aware? Are you aware? Are you following them to fidelity? Because we know you're saying that tier 2 and tier 3 needs are higher right now, but if we're not strong at the universal level, everything else will crumble. Improving school climate to increase feelings of safety and belonging among staff and students. And so the resources that we have offered are resources around equity, using ARP and Esser dollars for these reasons, and addressing social media challenges, the Department of Public Safety created a whole toolkit around some of the social media challenges we've heard about this school year, and then additional resources for mental health best practices in schools. We encourage supporting a trauma-informed framework, so policies and practices throughout the school, throughout the district, and again, remembering that collective trauma and how we've all experienced this and knowing how we need to move forward. So looking at the impact of trauma, pathways for recovery, recognizing trauma, the signs and symptoms, and adopting policies that avoid re-traumatization. And trauma-informed framework really includes the family, the students, and the staff. So the whole continuum of group of people who work and provide services. We encouraged being flexible and adjusting professional development to current needs. So one of the pieces that we heard from the listening session was that teachers wanted more professional development around trauma, around behavioral health. And I know that often professional development is planned out for the entire year at the beginning of the year. So we're encouraging flexibility. If new challenges arise with your specific students or in your community, how can you support your teachers and your staff in addressing it? But also creating partnerships with educational service centers, state support teams, the Adam H board. So bringing in partners who may have either more expertise or a different viewpoint to really support your district. Encouraging relationship building. So reconnecting, we heard that loud and clear. Teachers need to reconnect, students need to reconnect. How do you get your families engaged again? So we provided some resources on that. And then just providing overall staff support, mentoring, responding to secondary traumatic stress, promoting wellness activities, and just the overall acknowledging that they experienced either grief or loss and that collective trauma. This page has a lot of different resources that we have created, many in collaboration with the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, just to promote well-being and wellness for students, staff, and families. I will provide the links at the very end of my presentation, so you have access to all of them. Some of them are through the Department of Education's webpage, some of them are outside pages, but the Health and Wellbeing webpage was released at the beginning of the 2020-2021 school year. And this webpage really is a guide for districts and for schools on how to navigate well-being and wellness, including mental and behavioral health supports during and post-pandemic. The student and staff wellbeing toolkit is different than what I was just referring to. They all have similar names, but it was really designed to explore the social, emotional, behavioral considerations, including staff self-care, trauma-informed practices, and suicide prevention and intervention upon students' return to school. And all of these resources really can be used as we move into the next school year as well, because this year really was focused on getting back in the building, figuring out what our needs are so we can have a great reset next school year. Youth and adults mental health and wellness outreach is a guide that provides resources and tools around mental health and mental health awareness, and it has downloadable content. It has resources, worksheets, posters for parents, for teachers to use as, I don't want to call it a curriculum, but there's lessons embedded within it to really help reduce the stigma of mental health. The ABCs of mental health was designed for educators, for administrators to really kind of check in with themselves around their own mental health or their concerns that they may be experiencing. Whoops, flipped that too fast. Sorry about that. That they may be experiencing so that they can know the warning signs of when they may need additional support for themselves. The Esser and Arp Guidance, the department has several pages on Esser and Arp Guidance under different categories. We have some under PBIS, we have some under school climate, as well as mental health and prevention. And so it provides some tangible ideas of how emergency spending, the emergency relief funds can be spent. Specifically in the mental health and prevention page, you'll see things around professional development, contracting for mental health services, evidence-based programming, and meeting basic needs of your students. And then the last one, the Champions for Ohio's Children and Families, was a collaboration with Department of Job and Family Services around mandating reporting and how to support families when doing so. So in response to the stress related to COVID-19 and time outside of the school environment, we saw significant changes in student behavior, and we will likely continue to see these increases in mental health symptoms and concerns. So I know you're all very well versed in family engagement strategies. So what I encourage you to do over the next few slides as I present is really consider strategies from a wellness lens, and considering, again, that we've all experienced that collective trauma. And while this was occurring, families may have experienced additional trauma outside of the pandemic or stressors as well. So under the wellness lens, we want to consider the basic needs of students. So access to meals, hygienic supplies, students' basic physiological and psychological needs must be met before they can fully engage in learning, in social activities, all of the competencies we want to be able to see from our students. With information sharing, districts should really engage early with families that would be considered at risk. Evaluating how you communicate your programs and supports to your families, and what's available within the community, making sure that we're identifying programs as supports and resources rather than consequences. And in terms of information sharing, you really want to consider including topics and themes around student and parental mental health and wellness. Consider sharing school-wide or statewide data that you may have around wellness and mental health. That's why I typically open my presentations with the data from the Surgeon General from the state, so that people understand the why behind the current topic. And sharing district initiatives aimed at addressing student wellness and mental health. Families want to know, if you're telling me this is a problem, what are we doing about it? With parent events, look at the needs of your community, the capacity they may have for attendance, things like considering work schedules, childcare needs. Be open to discussions surrounding students' wellness and mental health. Collaborate with parents about how this can be supported in the classroom. When possible, host events at the school where parents can see what's happening within the school, parents can meet staff and faculty, and also remembering that if you host events in the school, you have a captive audience. So you can talk about wellness initiatives, you can do wellness activities. We have a district who every Saturday night hosts a movie night, and it's always around something that they can promote, different initiatives they have within their school. So ideas like Inside Out or other mental wellness type movies that you can then have discussions and wellness themes, or something like building self-care kits together. With parent voice, consider how you can get feedback from parents, whether you want it virtually, writing, in an in-person forum. I think we have more flexibility now than we did maybe a year ago in how we want to engage with our parents, but really hearing what their interests and wellness needs are, and potentially providing some prompts around this, because mental health is still facing a lot of stigma, and is still facing a lot of stigma in certain communities. So how do you prompt topics around wellness that can engage people in a conversation without feeling defensive or nervous that they're going to have some negative feedback? And then with the assessment tools, how can your districts gather data around engagement needs during this time? This is going to look a lot different than it may look in a few years. Or how well are they meeting the needs of family engagement? At the end of my presentation, I'll put in 2 different links for a faculty assessment and a parent assessment to see how do faculty feel about engaging with parents, and how do parents feel engaged do parents feel engaged by the school? So for Ohio students, the pandemic has really impacted their support system. parents, families, and educators have experienced their own trauma, anxiety, sadness, and loss. And addressing this trauma that I keep referring to is really a community-wide effort. It can't fall just on families. It can't fall just on schools. It can't fall just on community partners. It really is going to take a whole village and collaboration. And we know that trauma has the potential to harm, but we also know that there is hope through protective factors and resiliency. So here on the screen, I have some strategies that districts can share or consider when engaging with families to focus on mental health and wellness of their students. And these are also really important strategies for districts to adopt themselves within their schools. So modeling self-care, children look to the adults in their lives to set an example. So their teachers, their families, if they see them taking care of themselves, they understand what they need to do. Encouraging healthy habits, so healthy meals, sleep hygiene, exercise. Again, this is kind of that modeling piece where if they see you do it, they understand the importance. And knowing that being physically healthy can really assist with moving through a psychological challenge. Setting routines. Trauma can make everything seem uncertain. I discussed at the beginning where everything was unpredictable. We didn't know what day-to-day would look like. So now setting that routine, maintaining a routine so children know what to expect next. Encouraging questions. You may not be able to answer everything. The families may not be able to answer everything. The schools may not be able to answer everything, but encourage that dialogue and let them know that it's okay to ask questions. Alleviating blame. Kids are very likely to blame themselves around trauma or whatever, something negative that's happened to them. So making sure that they know that it was not their fault. And again, when you offer that dialogue around asking questions, that really supports that. And being a good listener. So practicing good listening skills, letting the child express themselves at their own speed, and affirm that it's good to have that dialogue. And these are strategies we really want to support over the next few years, because everybody's going to be at a different place in their journey from coming past the pandemic and the concerns that happened. Some experienced loss, just the inconsistency that we've experienced over the past few years. And by being able to address mental health and wellness in school, we're really going to see a lot of positive impacts. We'll see an increase in academic success because students can be focused, they can be fully present, they can feel safe and have that ability to learn. We can see an improvement in student attendance. I mentioned that students have been missing school due to mental health concerns. So we really want to focus on some of the root causes to get them back into the building. Student social emotional competencies will improve. We want to see them improve on how they're getting along with peers, how they're getting along with their teachers. And that will also then lead to a reduction in the behavioral concerns that we're hearing about. And if we can improve some of those issues, we're likely to see a higher teacher retention rate. I know that there are a lot of concerns around the current staffing situation and what it's going to look like next year. We want teachers to feel heard, capable of handling their concerns in their classroom. We want teachers to feel safe and part of the community. And all of these factors will lead to an overall positive school climate, which is really important for families, students, the community, teachers. So ultimately, by focusing on wellness, schools will meet their goals to provide all students a quality education and prepares them for success later in life. So I'll just close on reminding everybody that change happens very slowly, and we will need to focus on mental health, mental wellness of our staff, of our students, of our families for some time. And in this audience, encouraging your districts to remember this as well, and that there's no quick fix for the past few years, especially because this was a problem that was starting before the pandemic. So by working together, schools and families and community partners can really provide a variety of supports in the lives of their students to overcome the collective trauma. We know that protective factors occur in relationships, in communities, in the greater society. So by focusing on wellness of students and staff, we can really promote that resiliency and growth to move past the trauma of the past few years. We can build school environments where students feel safe and supported, where they can build relationships with staff and other students, and where they feel connected with their supports. with that, I will stop and pause for questions.
Cool. I am sure that this generated lots of questions, and I'm going to pass two along to you really quickly while other people get their fingers moving or towards unmuting their microphones. So first question that I think is I'd like to know about is you mentioned the listening sessions and kind of you know, mental health was an issue kind of before the pandemic. It's exacerbated or at least expanded during the pandemic, and that schools, when it comes to mental health and their entire education programs, are now pivoting kind of their focus based on some of those things you heard in the listening session, some of the data that's coming out in these reports. And you said something that really caught my attention about communicating these pivots to families and the community. And I think that's a position we're really interested in. And I was wondering if you could elaborate or share some ways that you've seen districts effectively relaying to their stakeholders, communities and families, that this is a necessary thing. It's not out of left field, and you know, how they're having success doing that.
Sure, and I think it can be a challenge. We've heard many challenges. We all know that this is a hot topic right now. There's no skirting around that. And so I think one of the biggest things we've heard that's been successful in communities and schools is really there's no such thing as over communicating the why. So in terms of, you know, if you're offering like a universal assessment tool, or if you're doing different activities, whatever that may be, is providing the parents the why behind it. There is a lot of misinformation out right now around the use of different assessment tools. Or different curriculums that are occurring in the school. So making sure that districts are communicating through multiple forums, not just a newsletter that went home. So I heard an example from a district who said they started the Panorama survey, and they sent multiple reminders out to their parents. This is going to happen in school. It is, it's optional. You can opt out of it. Here's what it is. And after it happened, parents came back and said, I had no idea this was happening. This isn't something I agreed to. And what they realized was, yeah, we're us sending home a couple pages isn't enough. We need to give them, what are we doing with this information? What is it collecting? How are we developing programming based on it? And it needs to be in more than one way. So we're going to hold maybe a town hall or a forum or a community night. We're going to send it home multiple times because maybe it'll get to somebody. But really that communication piece is huge. The why behind it, data that you can use to back it up, and letting parents ask questions, because again, there's a lot of misinformation being spread. So if they hear that misinformation and they hold on to it, it causes a lot of fear, and parents don't always know what to ask or how to get the correct information.
Thank you. And we heard a lot of things in your response that we're familiar with, and I appreciate Dr. Boone's point about looping families in from the very beginning of the planning stages all the way through. And I think you bring up a good, important point. We all work in the land of surveys, and just a reminder that to be using survey data, a component of using survey data kind of ethically is reporting back to the people you surveyed kind of what the responses were and what the next steps are. So that is something we could be encouraging schools and districts to make sure that they have a plan for that. The other question that came in that I think is important is, how do you see this work both towards educator wellness and student wellness kind of playing out in early childhood settings? Is it similar to kind of K-12, or is it kind of in a kind of happening in a different space?
Both, I would say. So I know there are separate initiatives around early childhood. I know our office of early childhood has some of their own initiatives, and grant funding looks a little bit different. we are actually in the process of collaborating on some of that together so that we can make sure that we're all on the same page with what's happening throughout the state. But also we can identify any gaps that may exist, because we know that very often that if K-12 is not communicating with early childhood, those gaps happen, right? I think we're seeing a lot of early childhood work come out of community mental health agencies as well, compared to maybe work in the schools where it might be by a school social worker or by a district employee. So it's definitely not something that that is being ignored at all. We are definitely always looking at different ways that we can collaborate across offices, so that if there's opportunities to share any of the great things that we're doing or we're learning, but it also sometimes is separate. So the both and, I guess.
Understood, and I appreciate that. Want to go ahead and invite people now, if they have questions for Nicole, to unmute and share them or drop it in the chat. I'll pass along.
Trying to look through the chat now too. I will share all of the resources I talked about in the presentation. In terms of the data from Miami, I can probably share a report from them. Some of the information that we have is not yet available for the public, but it will be in the next few months.
Well, if you do have a question, make sure to unmute and get that in here in just a second. I did want to take a moment to thank Nicole, not only for her time, but really mental health as like an emergent space in like education is really sometimes confusing. There's so much out there, and so many institutions are directing people in so many directions. There's so many resources that can be hard to figure out where to start. So I really appreciate you giving us a kind of like 360 holistic view of what the department has put together for schools as they attempt to tackle this issue with families and their communities. So I thank you very much for being here and invite others to share their appreciation.
Well, thank you for having me. I do, obviously, this is something I am very passionate about, and I have dedicated my whole career to. So I love coming to talk. Thank you again for being patient in the beginning. I saw all your kind words in the beginning. I do appreciate that. And I will say, if people aren't super familiar, the Office of Whole Child Supports did a little restructuring a few months ago as we continue to grow. It's a good thing. And so my position was previously a position that really focused on SCL and PBIS and a little bit of trauma and mental health. So now we have the opportunity to really focus. My whole position is now just mental health and trauma-informed practices within schools. So we do really have that opportunity as a department to focus and to grow. So that's really exciting. And like I said, we have some things growing and coming down and more funding available. So once I'm able to kind of talk to those, I would love to come back and share with you the additional projects that we have.
Yeah, we would love, again, thank you so much for sharing your passion with us. And we would really love to hear all of that stuff, because I think in terms of a coaching role and also just kind of how some of our partners and SSTs are situated, understanding the availability of funding and then having kind of concrete ways to share with districts to apply that, it would be really helpful. So again, just thank you so much, and we'll be reaching out to make sure this conversation doesn't end.
Great, thank you.
Wow. ODE coming through today with a bunch of really important information for us, things that we'll be sure to follow up on. I do want to just share that I will be sure to get all the links from today's presentations up on our webpage, and then you can access all of that through there. A lot of it's there already, but I'll follow up with an email, make sure everyone has access to this information. With the last couple of minutes that we have here, I want to just go over a couple announcements, if that is cool. So one announcement that we have is going to be about voices from the field. We are continuing to do voices from the field. It's just really a valuable tool to share the work of this network and to be able to pass along kind of to people in your community and people you know, who might be interested. What you all are doing is part of this group, but we have made some changes for how we're going to do it this year. I want to share those with you. So the first major change is, unlike years past, we will not be collecting a story from each state support team. That was kind of a hard decision to come to. We were kind of balancing people's busy schedules and also wanting to share like the great stories of things going on in your regions. We'll continue to prioritize sharing the stories of your regions in a lot of different ways. But right now, we're not going to ask everyone to submit something. What we're going to do instead is make a strong focus on the work of the work groups. These work groups over the last 2 or 3 years have really evolved in these powerhouse kind of self-sustaining things where people are just crushing work, making resources, making connections with other communities and thinkers in the state to pass this stuff along. And so we're going to pivot our focus to work that has come out of these work groups. We want to make a focus on resources as they that have been developed not only in the work groups, but as the network as a whole, things we've had our hands on and things that we can pass along tangibly to readers of the report. The other change is we're thinking mostly about it being web-based, potentially a new landing page or something for the network so that when people come to read about the network or find us in search on Google or something, that it highlights not just a mission statement about who we are, but the excellent and timely work that you all have been able to accomplish. So that's something we want to try to focus on, is modernizing how we're going to share this information. There's a lot of stuff and it's a lot of changes. So we do understand that, and we will be sure to make time available for work groups in May to hopefully be getting their work wrapped up, or a big chunk of their work done towards this at one time, where we'll already be together. We will, or I do encourage you, if you have work group meetings before that time, to maybe kick this around a little bit. Think about what you would like to highlight, what the main points have been of your work, and hopefully come into that May meeting with a little plan. But we can be kind of flexible about that with each team. So that's the updates on the voices from the field. I want to pause right now because it, you know, is as much as we've been thinking about this, we haven't really bounced it past you guys. So I just wanted to say, you know, if you want to open up your microphone or throw something in the chat, do you have any just thoughts on these updates? Do you have any, and also, I guess probably most importantly, are there any problems with what we've presented here that you all see? Okay, well, I feel like if I'm not hearing anything right now, I'm going to go ahead and take that as people are generally okay. I would encourage you, as always, you can reach out to me if you do have any concerns or questions and you just didn't want to bring them up in front of the group or just wanted to talk about it further, reach out to me anytime and we'll make some time to chit chat about that. So I have just one more update before we get out of here. So there's a new professional learning opportunity that we was shared with us, which I, looking into a little bit, thought could be not only maybe a good opportunity for you if you feel like this is in your wheelhouse, but also if you wanted to pass along to other people. The University of Minnesota is putting together a professional development series on early math and family engagement and getting families engaged around early math concepts. It's really exciting for me as a former math teacher and to see this work kind of emerging now. And so I just wanted to share this with you. Just to give you a little background of the course, and I'm going to attach the flyer to our follow-up email for you guys to share or register or whatever you want. This is hosted virtually by the University of Minnesota, and they're going to be offering brief online modules. The modules are designed specifically for family support professionals. So if this feels like something you're interested in, I think it would work for you. I think it would also work for some of the people you work with in districts and stuff. You'll get a certificate of completion, and there will be things like gift card incentives throughout to stimulate participation if you're able to accept things like that. So you'll also get a little certification that you did early math class, which is kind of cool. So just encouraging you all to look that up. Yeah, encouraging you all to look into that if it makes sense for you. So also, just did not want to miss this. Good friend and colleague Heidi here dropped in some information about SST 7's Family Engagement Recognition and Awards Day, which is coming up. So check out those links, check that out, support that work, been a part of that, and that's a great thing. Like you all are doing great things out there. I've been coming to a bunch of like local regional networks and stuff, and it's just so awesome to see how people are mobilizing their local partners around family engagement. So keep up the fantastic work. And something that would help me continue this work, hopefully fantastically, but let me know if it wasn't, is if you could complete this brief exit survey. Lets me know what you're interested in, what we could do better for next time. It's really important data for us. And I'd encourage you to, if you got 2-3 minutes to take it right now. Should be able to wrap it up in that time. But with that, we're going to stay on the line for a couple minutes and chit chat if people got things to ask or say. But we really appreciate you being here today, and hopefully you got something out of this experience, hopefully. And we hope just that you have a great April 12th, 2022. Happy Tuesday. Have a great day, week, and year. Thank you all.